I came home early and overheard my girlfriend bragging about cheating on me, so I left without a word. Now she's desperately trying to find me, but I've blocked her everywhere. I, 28 male, have always considered myself a pretty average guy with simple routines. I work at a local service company handling day-to-day tasks, clock in by morning, and usually get out around late afternoon. My place is a one-bedroom apartment in a medium-sized city. I wouldn't call my lifestyle extravagant, but it's comfortable. A big part of that comfort, until recently, was my girlfriend, whom I dated for a year and a half. When we first got together, I liked that she had a vibrant social circle. She was the type who'd always be texting a friend, planning a hangout, or coordinating group events. I'll admit, in the early days, her high energy captivated me, especially compared to my quieter nature. We balanced each other out. I provided stability. She brought excitement. Or so I believed. Things started feeling off a few weeks ago. She got a new circle of friends, people I'd never met whom she described vaguely as coworkers or industry contacts. Odd phone calls would come late at night, and she'd step outside to answer them. When I asked what was going on, she'd flash a casual smile and say, "It's nothing. Just a friend in crisis." I shrugged it off, thinking she was just being supportive. But a nagging feeling grew inside me, a suspicion that something was happening behind my back. One Thursday, my boss let me clock out earlier than usual. I decided to surprise my girlfriend by swinging by the grocery store and picking up her favorite dessert. I pictured us relaxing on the couch, watching a show, chatting about our day. I parked outside my building, climbed the stairs, and noticed our door was slightly ajar. That was strange. She usually locked up, especially if she had friends over. Maybe she was distracted or needed some air. As I stepped in, I heard voices, laughter, and a conversation in the living room. My girlfriend's voice stood out, loud and confident. She was in mid-sentence, presumably talking to a friend on the phone. I caught a snippet that sent shivers down my spine. He has no idea. I've been with this other guy for weeks. I'm honestly shocked I haven't slipped up, but I know exactly how to keep them both clueless. My heart skipped a beat. My mind raced. Was she talking about me? I froze in the entryway, a grocery bag in my hand. I stood as still as possible, trying not to make a single sound, and listened. Her voice carried on, revealing details no partner wants to hear. She was bragging about hooking up with someone else, hiding texts and calls, and making excuses if I got suspicious. She laughed, saying something like, "He's so naive, he'd never believe I'd do anything behind his back. I can spin any story, and he'll buy it." Each word felt like a punch to my trust. I realized I was listening to the person I thought I loved, proudly boasting about how easy it was to cheat on me. Part of me wanted to burst into the living room and confront her, demand an explanation, scream at her for lying. Yet something in me resisted. Instead of barging in, I gently placed the bag of dessert by the entry table and took a step backward. She was so absorbed in her phone call that she never heard me. I tried to steady my breath. My pulse hammered in my ears, and adrenaline coursed through my veins. A jumble of thoughts swirled. Anger, hurt, a weird numbness. I weighed my options in a split second. Was this worth a dramatic confrontation? She'd obviously made her choices, and her words told me everything I needed. With a strange calmness, I turned and quietly slipped back out the door, leaving it slightly ajar the way I found it. I left the building, not even bothering to wait in my car. I just walked, mind blank, legs moving on autopilot, seeking distance from that betrayal. By the time I reached a nearby park, I felt my phone buzzing. My girlfriend must have finished gloating on her call and realized I was supposed to be home by now. A small part of me wanted to answer, confront her, ask if every sweet moment between us was a lie. But the shock was still too raw. I silenced the call and kept walking. Eventually, I settled on a bench, staring at the pond and replaying her words in my head. She described me as naive, easy to manipulate, someone she could betray without consequence. That stung the most. It wasn't just that she cheated. It was her total disregard for my feelings. She was proud of getting away with it. Looking back, maybe some hints had been there. But I never thought she was capable of such callousness. She called again, and again texts started pouring in. "Where are you? And we still doing dinner?" I ignored them. Every beep fueled a growing anger inside me. The woman who'd once professed loyalty was apparently weaving lies behind my back. A confrontation in person might just give her a chance to weasel out of it, to cry or beg or twist facts. I wasn't ready to hear her voice, to see her fake contrition. The memory of her bragging was too fresh. After an hour of walking around aimlessly, I realized I couldn't go back to the apartment with her there. That space, once cozy, now felt contaminated by her deceit. I had some savings and a coworker who rented a place across town. We joked about splitting rent if I ever needed a new spot. Maybe that was my next move. But first, I needed a place to sleep for the night. I ended up checking into a modest motel near the outskirts of the city. Inside that drab, tiny room, I allowed myself to breathe. I noticed the frantic notifications on my phone. She was calling nonstop, and each missed call left a tightening knot in my stomach. My initial heartbreak morphed into an icy resolve. If she thought I'd roll over and let this slide, she had another thing coming. Lying on that stiff motel bed, I made a plan. I would vanish from her life. No explanation, no dramatic showdown. She had proven she felt zero remorse, so I owed her nothing. The apartment's lease was solely in my name, but we'd been living there together. All her stuff was inside, but I realized I could simply cut ties and handle the legalities later. Let her wonder where I went. Let her experience the confusion and emptiness she so casually inflicted on me. I texted a friend, one who'd always had my back, and summarized the situation in a few blunt sentences. She's been cheating. I overheard her brag about it. I left. Need a safe space to figure things out. Please keep this quiet. My friend called instantly, outraged on my behalf, offering a couch. But I decided to stick with a motel for a night or two. I craved solitude, time to fully process what I discovered. While I tried to calm down, my phone kept lighting up. Some texts from her seemed angry, others panicked. Why aren't you home? Are you ignoring me on purpose? I hope nothing bad happened. The shift from cocky betrayal to feigned concern was almost laughable. I pictured her pacing around, worried that the comfortable double life she'd created might be crumbling. Maybe she was trying to figure out how she'd slipped up. For once, I found a grim satisfaction in leaving her in the dark. The next morning, I woke up groggy in that motel bed, a swirl of half-formed nightmares behind my eyes. I scrolled through more messages. She'd left a voicemail that began sweetly but ended in frustration. If you're mad at me, can we just talk? Stop acting weird. She gave no indication she knew she'd been caught. I guess she assumed I just got moody and stormed off. But I was done playing the role of clueless partner. I decided to take more concrete steps. With my friend's help, I arranged to have my stuff moved discreetly. My friend worked with a small pickup truck, and we planned it for a weekday when she'd likely be out. I sent another message. If you see me, please don't speak to me. We're finished. Then, before she could respond, I blocked her number. It felt both liberating and terrifying. This was someone I loved, or at least thought I loved. Now I was severing all ties in the space of hours. Was I being too rash? Should I have demanded an explanation, force her to face me? No. I recalled her glee, bragging about how I'd never suspect a thing. That memory hardened my resolve. If she was so sure of her deception, then she didn't deserve a fair hearing. I also blocked her on social media, ensuring she couldn't track my whereabouts or spam me with half-hearted apologies. She might try to manipulate me if I left even a single channel open. Her arrogance told me she'd do anything to preserve her image or maintain her lifestyle. I wanted no part in that. On the day we planned to move my belongings out of the apartment, I felt a knot in my stomach. My friend arrived at the motel, picked me up, and drove to my place around midday. I timed it so she would likely be at work. Sure enough, the apartment door was locked, no sign of movement inside. Walking in felt surreal, like stepping onto a stage after the final show. This was the home I'd shared with a person who used to greet me with smiles, watch movies with me, and talk about a future together. Now it looked the same, but the warmth was gone. I ignored the pang of nostalgia and focused on the task at hand. My friend and I packed my clothes, some personal items, and the few sentimental things I couldn't bear to leave behind. I took important documents, laptop, and anything that belonged solely to me. Furniture-wise, there was some overlap, items we'd both chipped in for. I decided not to bother fighting over them. Let her keep the couch, the TV, the decor she liked so much. While loading boxes, I noticed some suspicious items in corners I'd rarely checked. A second phone charger that wasn't mine, clothes in the closet that I'd never seen her wear. Evidence, maybe, of a life she was living behind my back. It only solidified my decision to sever ties. She could keep her secrets. I was taking my dignity with me. We finished faster than expected. My friend asked if I wanted to leave a note or something. I shook my head. No, let her figure it out on her own. Before leaving, I spared one last glance at the living room, a space that once felt like home. Then I locked the door behind me and left the key in a mailbox. I wasn't sure if that was entirely legal, but it was symbolic enough. If she wanted to deal with the lease, she could. I'd handle the landlord separately, maybe pay a penalty fee to get off the contract. But staying there was out of the question. A few hours later, while unpacking at my friend's place, I turned my phone on after blocking my girlfriend's contact and all her known social handles to find countless missed calls from unknown numbers. Probably her using a different phone or a friend's device. I felt my chest tighten momentarily, but I fought the urge to listen to any voicemails. No matter what she said, I doubted it would erase the betrayal. That night, I heard from a mutual acquaintance. They texted me, "Your girlfriend is freaking out, she can't find you. She said you disappeared out of nowhere. Do you know what's going on?" I debated telling them the truth, but I didn't want to drag more people into this mess. I replied with a short message. "We broke up. She knows why. I need some space. Thanks for asking." I left it at that. If she wanted to spin a sob story about me running away, let her. The truth was, I didn't run from anything. I simply refused to engage in a rigged game. Meanwhile, rumors spread in our larger circle of friends. Some were confused, some outraged, some tried to pry details from me. I only confided in a small handful of close pals, explaining I'd overheard her bragging about cheating. Everyone I told was horrified on my behalf, but they respected my wish to keep it low-key. The last thing I wanted was to feed her drama. I got wind that she was making frantic attempts to track me down. She even messaged my friend, claiming it was all a misunderstanding and that I should give her a chance to explain. I rolled my eyes. Misunderstanding? I distinctly heard her voice boasting about sneaking around and fooling me. Unless she'd been rehearsing lines for a twisted play, there was nothing to misunderstand. I half expected her to show up at my workplace, but she must have known I'd walk out the moment I saw her. A couple days passed, and the barrage of unknown number calls slowed. I suspected she might be planning some grand gesture, maybe turning up with tears and half-baked excuses. But I remained firm. I wanted no confrontation. If she did appear, I'd walk away or call security if necessary. I refused to let her spin this into a spectacle where she could manipulate my emotions. About a week into my new arrangement, crashing on my friend's couch until I found a more permanent place, I felt a weight gradually lifting. Sure, heartbreak lingered. The mental image of her bragging about cheating was tough to shake. But every day, I woke up to an environment free of lies, free of the uneasy tension that had haunted me. I realized that as awful as the betrayal was, my silent departure had given me a kind of power. She couldn't corner me with tears or justifications. She was stuck in the aftermath, uncertain how to fix what she'd willfully broken. One afternoon, I got a text from an unknown number that read, "If you just talk to me, I can explain everything." I made a mistake, but we can work this out. I recognized her style of texting. I stared at the screen, remembering that conversation I'd overheard. He has no idea. I've been with this other guy for weeks. My temper flared. Was she truly expecting me to open the door for her sorry excuses? I blocked that number too. The next day, another friend told me she'd approached them, practically begging for my new address. She said she just wants 5 minutes to plead her case, my friend relayed. I asked if they'd given it to her. Thankfully, they hadn't. They respected my need for distance. Time crawled on. The initial shock and anger softened into a mix of sadness and relief. I was disappointed that the woman I once trusted could be so heartless, but I was also proud that I didn't degrade myself by pleading or demanding answers. Her own words were all the proof I needed. That's when, through the grapevine, I heard about her new meltdown. Apparently, the guy she was cheating with also ditched her after hearing the fiasco. Maybe he discovered she was bragging about him too, or realized she wasn't exactly relationship material. According to mutual acquaintances, she spiraled, complaining about how unfair it was that everyone abandoned her. The entitlement was staggering. She genuinely seemed to believe she had the right to keep me and her side fling at the same time. Part of me felt a grim satisfaction. She'd reaped the consequences of her own arrogant actions. No tears or apologies were going to fix the damage. I didn't revel in her pain, but I couldn't muster sympathy either. She'd stepped on my trust to amuse herself, so it was only fitting that her illusions fell apart. Eventually, I got my own little studio apartment across town. My friend helped me settle in. There was a heaviness when I set down my boxes, but also a sense of renewed independence. I liked that I wouldn't be walking into a place haunted by memories of her. This was a fresh start, small but entirely mine. Even though I'd blocked her on every channel, once in a while a new unknown text appeared. "I'm so sorry," or "Can we meet?" or "I never meant to hurt you." Each one got promptly blocked. I wasn't trying to be vengeful. I just believed her pleas meant nothing if she bragged about her infidelity with such glee. Besides, she'd had plenty of chances to respect our relationship before it reached that point. A month later, I was fully settled into the new routine. New apartment, new daily commute, a slightly changed social circle. My close friends remained supportive, and I felt more secure than I'd been in a long time. No more anxious second-guessing. No more lies to navigate. I sometimes replayed that moment of overhearing her phone call, how I quietly left instead of confronting her. It was an unorthodox choice, but it gave me closure without the usual drama or heartbreak scenes. I ended the relationship on my terms. In hindsight, I realized the best revenge was letting her words condemn her. I didn't need to argue or lash out. She'd done the damage all by herself, bragging about her secret fling, underestimating me. By leaving silently and blocking her everywhere, I sent the loudest message. I wasn't a doormat to be stepped on. She lost the power to manipulate me with crocodile tears or half-baked excuses. Sometimes people ask if I regretted not confronting her face to face. Honestly, no. She would have twisted the truth, maybe even turned the blame on me, calling me paranoid or controlling. Instead, the memory of her unfiltered bragging was enough proof to walk away. The final outcome speaks for itself. She ended up alone, frantic to fix a mess she created, while I moved on, building a life free from her betrayal. And that's the end of it. She can search high and low, but I'm gone from her world. I don't need her apology or closure. I have my own closure, knowing I kept my self-respect intact. If that's not a satisfying conclusion, I don't know what is.